Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Very excited today to be joined by a returning guest. Although there is one slight difference between now and the last time I talked to him. He has been, I guess he doesn't have enough to do. Wendy isn't keeping him busy enough on the Hoop Collective. So he decided to write this book, which I am holding up. You could see it if you're watching on the YouTube channel. The Wonder Boy, Luka Doncic, and the Curse of Greatness. Boy, oh boy, can I not wait to get into this. Tim MacMahon, how are you, my friend?
Howdy, partner. I appreciate you having me. And it's been a busy run. That book, the last chapter is not in that edition you have. Now you can get that bad boy with proof of purchase. You can get it sent to you via a PDF. But I don't know if you were aware, but there was a little plot twist after the first 8,000 copies of that book had already been printed.
So, I was going to save this to the end because I'm going to get my questions for me out before the end of the episode. But since you just brought it up, why not? Let's start here. The trade goes down, and I just need to know, in your mind at that moment, is it Tim MacMahon, or I don't know how you learned of it, maybe if you want to share, but is it Tim MacMahon reporter, or is it Tim MacMahon, oh shit, I have a book coming out about this guy, and what now happens with all that? Like, what's your process?
Yeah, no, it was Tim MacMahon reporter first and foremost, because, obviously this is, I think it is fair to say, the most shocking trade in NBA history, if not pro sports history. And, it happened with a team that is right in my backyard. So Shams broke it, and I'd been a long day traveling from San Francisco to Cleveland. I was just about to go to bed. We're not getting any sleep tonight. And so, getting to reporter mode, make phone calls, shooting out texts. Obviously, my phone's blowing up with people around the league reacting to this. Is this real? Then reacting, all those kind of things. Was able to very quickly actually talk to Nico Harrison, get a quote from Nico Harrison, get his logic for the trade and the Mavericks' logic for the trade, flawed as it may be, reported. We recorded an edition of the Hoop Collective. Probably it's fine. I went back and looked at my email at 1:34 Eastern, which was probably like an hour and 20-ish minutes after the trade. I did send an email to my book agent, people from the publishing company, saying, we need to meet like ASAP. Okay, we've got to figure something out. And that's when I told them there has to be another chapter. I can get it to you by next Friday, which is Valentine's Day, which is hectic because it's a fairly busy time for me professionally in my day job. But I think that was right before we started recording the Hoop Collective, because we recorded an edition of the Hoop Collective that night. It was the most listened and viewed edition in the history of the podcast. Again,
first thing I listened to.
Yeah, it's and then I think I slept like 90 minutes. I had early Sports Center. The Mavericks had it's either a 2:30 or a 12:30. It was an afternoon tip in Cleveland, or at least the leftovers of the Mavericks, and that was when Nico Harrison had the very brief, very awkward, I'm not even going to call it a press conference.
That was the one with Kidd, right?
Yeah, I'm going to say he sat in Jason Kidd's normal pregame availability for, 6 or 7 minutes. And that's the only media appearance that he's done since this trade was made.
So you've been reporting. Well, let me ask you, how long were you working on this book for?
Yeah, I agreed to it during the 21-22 season. So it's been really a 3-summer project is what I would say. I didn't work on it much at all during the season. Maybe, because I'm reporting on this team anyway. So there's definitely interviews and reporting that, it's kind of like you're doing both at the same time because they're the same thing, reporting. But in terms of the writing and book specific research, 22 was a research summer. That's when I went to Slovenia. I went to Germany for Eurobasket group play with the Slovenian national team. And then 23 was the majority of the writing. Actually, it was supposed to be due at the end of that summer, running last March, and I dodged a bullet on that one. There's a change in the publishing company. But seriously, think about it. They make the Kyrie trade, right? That team fizzles. They have to tank to keep the top 10 protected pick they owe the New York Knicks. And by the way, there's all kinds of Knicks ties with the Mavericks throughout the book, including a massive development that had a significant impact leading up to Luka getting traded.
We're going to get into that.
Yes, they tank to keep that top 10 protected pick. And so if the ending is based on that season, and there was this major fear in the organization at that time, hey, if we don't get this thing turned around, like Luka might be looking to ask out as soon as the summer of 24. And it's not that Luka was like making noise about it or anything, but it's just like, dude, you got a perennial first team All-NBA player who is entering his prime years or is approaching his prime years. You can't even make the playoffs. And so if it had been this, it would have been like a gloomy and doomy open ending. But could you imagine if that's the ending? The book comes out. They have the best record in the league down the stretch of the regular season, go to the finals. That would have been a tough look. So instead, they go to the finals. It's a happy, still open inning, but like Luka's happy to be in Dallas. You know, things are looking great. They've got stability with a superstar. And then he gets traded. So that's, I want to pick up there because you said, like, I remember the doom and gloom, and I remember it specifically as a Knicks fan, who I would hear that stuff. And, look, I don't care who you are, how grounded you are. If you hear a guy like Luka Doncic maybe eventually unhappy with his current team, you're going to start to have notions, and you're going to have dreams, and you're going to have wishes. And especially me, who we talked about it a little bit last time you were on. I just think Luka Doncic is one of those guys that comes along every 15, 20 years. Did you, in your wildest dreams, ever think, because obviously there was a lot leading up to this, and obviously you reported on that along the way and in the research and the whole thing, ever think this would, like, there was a 1% chance that something like this could happen? So the whole premise of the book is there's this pressure on a franchise when you draft a prodigy like this, build a contender or they might leave. Right. And like LeBron, KD, like we can go through all the examples in recent NBA history. That's just the reality in the modern day NBA. So as I'm reporting this book, as I'm working this book, frankly, especially after they completely botched the Jalen Brunson situation, which there's a chapter that's largely, dedicated to that. Actually excerpted on ESPN.com today, part of that chapter. But after that, I thought there was a very real chance that this story might end in a trade. What I never, ever, ever even considered as a remote possibility was that trade would be the Mavericks' decision and completely blindsiding the guy. The only reason I thought it might end in a trade is because I thought it might reach a point where Luka, despite his legitimately strong wishes and intent to spend his entire career in Dallas, would look around and say, I just don't have any real chance to compete for a championship here. I mean, think about all the honestly, just think about the Knicks related missteps in the Mavericks Luka era. The KP trade is a massive swing, and it was a whiff. Now, could it have worked if they were more patient? There's a lot of ifs there. And KP has obviously gone on to be a champion, a huge piece of a championship team. But for the Mavericks, dude, they took back 2 contracts the Wizards were looking to dump, and Dallas threw in a second-round pick to get that deal done. That was the end of the KP era for the Mavericks, while they still owed that top 10 protected pick. And then you still managed to that season, after trading KP, go on a Western Conference Finals run, and hey, this scrappy little, tough-minded guard that you drafted along with Luka in the second round just kept getting better and better and better. And lo and behold, wow, Luka had to miss a few playoff games. This dude had 41 and 31 in wins, and he's the second best player on a Western Conference Finals team. And okay, maybe you stumbled into a co-star you didn't know existed. You didn't know you already had. Oh, whoops, you lose him for nothing. And oh, by the way, you could have had him for about half of what the Knicks gave him on that deal if you'd have committed to him even midway through that season. I mean, and so, yeah, I thought there was a possibility it would end in a trade. Just not like this. This one, going to the finals, and then you decide to dump him months later before the very next trade deadline. No, that one, if I saw a Hollywood script, I'd be like, come on, man. Like, that's not realistic.
I want to dig into the Brunson excerpt, which I read this morning, and is, my goodness, it's chock full of stuff. I'm saving it intentionally because I want to do one more on the Luka thing, because I think what's been interesting in the aftermath is not just that it has been criticized, which obviously everybody knew the second it happened was going to be criticized, but in the nature of the criticism and where that criticism is pointed. So I'm just going to ask you, from your perspective, is the bigger sin that they traded him at all, or that they traded him when they did, how they did, and for what they did?
It's interesting because as I've talked to many, many, many people around the league, GMs, executives, scouts, coaches, assistant coaches, all those type of people, I haven't had a single person from another team tell me they thought this was a good deal for the Mavericks. Not one. Not one. And there's two camps. The majority just say, hey, like, I don't care if a kid's a pain in the butt, which, he is a little bit, but honestly, by superstar standards, I don't think it's that ridiculous.
You say he's a kid. You just use the word kid. Like, isn't there an assumption of maturity at some, like, that will come?
Well, and maybe, but in some ways, honestly, like, Luka is a guy who left Slovenia when he was 13 years old, and like is almost kind of like a Justin Bieber or like a childhood, actor. Like, in some ways, he's almost frozen in his adolescence that he never really got to experience. Not, I got a C in community college psychology, but that's, just to take that for what it's worth.
It's worth something.
But okay, the young man who has yet to hit what should be his prime years, the majority camp is you just can't trade that level of generational talent, and not even based on the potential, based on who he is proven to be. A 5-time first team All-NBA selection, a guy who, up until this season when he missed too many games, has been a perennial MVP candidate. Just cannot trade that guy unless he has the proverbial gun to your head, which he absolutely didn't. He was about to close on his forever home in Dallas and couldn't wait to sign the Supermax this summer. The other camp, and again, this is a more of a minority opinion, but I have heard this from several people, is that, look, I understand wanting to get out of the Luka business, for the reasons that I've reported on the Mavericks having concerns, the diet, the conditioning, the lack of discipline, etc. But you have to maximize the return. They did not. And the process they went about prevented them from being in a position to maximize the return. If it's got to be top secret, you can't, they did make very cursory calls to Milwaukee and Minnesota, from my understanding. But I was like, hey, could you ever imagine doing like a star for star deal? Like, I don't even know if Luka's name was specifically mentioned, implied, but oh no, okay, cool. Just crossed my mind. But the only team they negotiated with was the Lakers. It was Nico Harrison targeting one of his guys and Anthony Davis. And they had this fear of the Supermax that I really think, and talking to people around the league, a lot of people believe is extraordinarily flawed logic for two reasons. One, there's a short list of players that the Supermax is a bargain in terms of their production and impact. Luka's on that list, and it might be 4 players, but he's one of them. Shea, Joker, Luka, Giannis, those 4 for sure. Then we can debate.
That might be the list.
They're probably $100 million values, talking to some like analytics people in front offices around the league. So just the fact that you don't think he's worth that. Okay. Oh, okay. You think he's going to break down? Dude, if you Supermax him, you play out this season, Supermax him, you got to play out next season. So you got a year and a half of you've got to hold on to Luka. Maybe you go back to a finals or 2. Maybe you don't. Maybe he grows during that time and things improve and with your concerns. Maybe they don't. If you still feel the same way after that year and a half, I don't care what injuries he's suffered. I don't care how many games he's missed. You put him on the block, use a bullhorn to announce to the league that summer, hey, we're trading Luka, and it's going to be done by a training camp. So let the bidding war begin. And it would have been just a historic sort of bidding war. This is the kind of player, and you talked about you as a Knicks fan. Just kind of imagine front office's plot to get a swing at this sort of a player for years in advance. I mean, listen, the draft when it was Luka and Giannis, Mavericks got one other player in that draft. Probably nobody remembers who it was, but I mentioned it in the first chapter because it's just a small little example of the things that front offices around the league do just to hope to improve their chances a little bit at getting a superstar. They drafted Kostas Antetokounmpo.
I remember that name.
With the 60th and final pick in the draft. They traded for the 60th pick to get him so they could bring him in the G League, so they could try to establish a relationship with the family, because it's funny. Giannis, I talk about this pressure when you get this sort of a player. It's been on the Bucks since literally before Luka was drafted. And it's like an every year thing. He's still in Milwaukee. Again, this summer will be interesting if they don't make a playoff run, but so there are those. And then the other thing in terms of the fear of the Supermax, I don't think Patrick Dumont had the new governor, Las Vegas Sands CEO, the guy who's running the Mavericks now, or allowing Nico to run the Mavericks. I don't think he had a clue in the world about the financial ramifications of dumping Luka Doncic. This trade is going to cost the Mavericks multiple times the value of his Supermax in revenue over the next 5 years. Multiple times.
That's it's almost like, I guess they let anyone own a pro sports team because they do, clearly. I mean, I shouldn't say that in New York, where we've had some checkered experience. Although, you know what? Not a lot of James Dolan complaints over the last few years. I'll say that. Let's give the man his due.
Hey, Leon Rose, another guy who appears in that very first chapter, because he's Jalen Brunson's agent at the time, got a shout out from Donnie Nelson in the introductory press conference that opens the book. Leon Rose has done a heck of a job. Might not chit chat with the media a whole bunch, but he's done a heck of a job there over his last few years. And honestly, like, the Porzingis trade, if you go back to that, it was so popular in Dallas at the time and got killed in New York. And it worked out better for the Knicks than it did for the Mavericks. It didn't work out exactly how the Knicks hoped it would in that moment. Yeah. They didn't get KD and Kyrie that summer. They didn't get their superstar haul right away because it was about creating cap space as much as anything else. But that was a better trade for the Knicks than it was for the Mavericks.
If you squint, you could argue that it gave them the cap space to sign Julius Randle, and then also eventually, even though there was some Spurs chicanery, Marcus Morris, who was then flipped for the pick that became Emmanuel Quickley. Again, if you really squint hard, you could make the argument that the Knicks did okay in that trade. Hey guys, quick word to tell you about our friends from MANDO. What is MANDO? Well, I'll tell you. It is a whole body deodorant that is safe to use anywhere on your body. Yes, there is a part of your personage that may smell. MANDO is to the rescue. It was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO, we all know about BO, was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. So here's the deal. MANDO, does it have a normal deodorant stick that you've been using your whole life on your underarms? Absolutely it does. And it's great. But that's not all that they have, because your BO and your odor does not just come from under your armpits. It comes from all over the place. So if you want a little spray for yourself, MANDO has that. If you want a little invisible cream, MANDO's Pro Sport, it has that. If you want some body wash for your different odor issues, MANDO has that. And best of all, they have these invisible wipes. These are my favorite ones. You pop them open, you grab a wipe. If you know you've been sweating from a particular place, wipe it off a little bit, and you're good to go. MANDO truly has figured out something that it has taken way, way, way too long to figure out for us men. We are busy, we are sweaty, we are smelly, and we must control that odor. MANDO's starter pack, it really is perfect for new customers. It comes with all the things that I just showed you, plus free shipping. And as a special offer for Knicks Film School listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to 40% off your starter pack. Just use code KFS at shopmando.com. Again, it's 40% off a starter pack. by using code KFS at SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Quick break to tell you about our friends from HUEL, specifically the HUEL Black Edition ready-to-drink meal in a bottle. What is HUEL? Well, I'm excited to tell you about it, and I'm excited to show you. But first, a quick reminder that if you want to get in on HUEL, new customers can visit HUEL.com/KFS today and use my code KFS to get 15% off your first order plus a free gift. So again, what is HUEL? It is a meal in a bottle. It is super convenient. It is very easy for anybody who has a busy life like me doing a bunch of podcasts. What do I need? I need a bottle that I could throw in my bag, take with me on the go, pop open, and boom. There is my meal in a bottle right here. It comes in some great flavors. Iced coffee, that's my wife's favorite. Chocolate and banana, vanilla, or the one I am partial to, chocolate. I am a big fan of a good old chocolate milkshake, but chocolate milkshakes aren't great for me. HUEL, however, really is delicious. It's something I could feel good about drinking. And again, it is super easy and convenient. Tons of benefits, high in protein, vitamin C. It's cheaper than a cup of coffee, and it tastes really good. Again, if you want to get in on the action with Black Edition ready-to-drink meals in a bottle, just go to HUEL.com/KFS today and use my code KFS to get 15% off that first order plus a free gift. So let's get to the chapter you've been alluding to, because I read the excerpt this morning. Again, it is chock full of brand new reporting. So if you think you know everything about the Brunson backstory with Dallas, yeah, you don't. And as I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, you know what's so funny? Brunson goes and signs with the Knicks that summer. Luka's traded 2.5 years later. We never got a Brunson-Luka matchup when Brunson was on the Knicks and Luka was on the Mavs.
What? I did not even realize that.
The teams played each other 5 times, and every one of those times, either one or the other was injured. And then if you really want to go full bore, the first time that the two actually did match up, when Luka was in the Laker uniform, Brunson leaves with the ankle injury that he's still out now.
You know what? That's really interesting. I guess I should have realize that, but I didn't realize that until you just said it.
It may be the basketball guy would say, you know what, this is just not meant to be. And I wonder how much of that has to do with Brunson's exit from Dallas. So one of the reasons I asked you about when your reporting started is you said, 21, 22.
Yeah.
There's a excerpt from, or a part of that chapter, which predates that season, which is in 2021, which was now maybe somewhat infamously, I guess, if you're in Dallas. Brunson's coming off that very underwhelming series against, I believe it was the Los Angeles Clippers, when he was kind of sort of benched.
Yeah, Trey Burke was playing minutes in Game 7 over him. I mean, think about that.
Once a Knick, always a Knick. Trey Burke, we love him here. And you and Brunson's, so you have Brunson's camp, which you report that not only were they willing to accept the 4 for 50, whatever it was, 4 for 55.
4 for 55, yeah.
But you say they at that time would have been willing to accept even a little less than that. I think
Rick Brunson says it on the record. Now, sometimes people, say Rick Brunson's got
Rick's
a way
a colorful guy.
Yes, but he says it on the record. And look, what did they have taken $50 million? But I promise you this: they were ready to sign 4 years, $55 million, and were shocked and stunned and taken aback. The Mavericks weren't willing to put it on the table.
Which gets to the other part at the beginning of that chapter, which again, you have Mark Cuban saying that they internally did not believe that there would be, I'm going to quote the book, Cuban also didn't, as you're writing, Cuban also didn't believe there would be much of a market for Brunson if he did hit free agency, privately pointing out that the team set up to have salary cap space the next summer had all made heavy investments in young guards. I wonder when in that timeline he noticed the Knicks, or if it even factored in, it probably didn't, getting Kemba Walker. I wonder if they, oh, well, yeah, but there's the ties there, but they have Kemba now, so they're set at point guard. Of course, that didn't work out so well. But in any case, he thought Brunson wasn't going to get more than the mid-level from anyone, which, of course, and you quote, the mid-level at that time was 4 for 45.
I mean, give or take $60 million. He was close.
Yeah, and this was the thinking, and that part of it is interesting to me. The more interesting part is what comes next. And you have it here, and this is the first time I've seen this anywhere, which you have you quote Mavs GM Nico Harrison, now infamous, a text to Cuban in early February, basically warning him. I just think this New York thing is too tied to his family to overcome. So in your reporting, they basically knew, or thought they knew, before the deadline where this was headed. Is that fair?
Yes. And so that had been reported, because you know where everybody learned that? This was when Cuban met with the media courtside before a game,
which you referenced later.
Yeah, before they decided to tank, or when right after actually they decided to tank, and things are messy with Luka. Luka did not want to tank. Luka had just acknowledged that, like a couple days before, for the first time, just how much the Mavericks missed Brunson. And he was talking about, like, the culture of the team's not the same. I said, how much do you miss Brunson? And, like, this sad look came over Luka's face. He's like, a lot, and looked down. And so then Cuban's like, he met with the media. His big point was to prove, hey, that's when he blamed Rick Brunson for Jalen's departure. Everything was cool till the parents got involved, till Rick Brunson got involved. And he scrolled through his phone and he showed us that text. And that text is from February something. Now, the Brunsons, Rick before Jalen's departure, Jalen after his departure, had said that late December, early January, they went back to the Mavericks and said, hey, we said we weren't going to negotiate during the season. And this is after Jalen, Luke had missed a bunch of time with COVID. And then, like, actually it was an ankle, and then just a shutdown to get in shape, and COVID. And Brunson had kept it afloat. Brunson had gone from 6-man to starter.
21-7, I think, over that stretch of games he averaged, and kept them with a decent record. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, oh, hey, Brunson ain't just a pretty good little player. Like, he's
a real guy.
At this point, it's like he might be their second best player. KP was still on the roster at the time. But anyways, and even then it was a conversation. They will go back to the Mavericks to say, if you put that extension on the table now, we'll sign it. The Mavericks wouldn't. And the reason is because they were on the hunt for a co-star for Luka, and they knew if that trade comes along, Brunson was going to have to be involved. Dorian Finney-Smith would have had to be involved. Finney-Smith signed that extension when they put it on the table seconds after the trade deadline. Brunson, at that point, as in his word, had outgrown it. Like, he knew at that point, like, nah, my market's going to be better in 4 for 55. I ain't signing that. And then the Knicks stuff, the family ties, obviously, all that stuff had always been there. But the fear, I don't believe, really picked up until February. And they still didn't trade him before the deadline. But when the Knicks were among the teams calling, by the way, it's not like they didn't get calls on Brunson.
That's something I definitely had not heard before. I, again, would have loved to know what the Knicks offered at that time. But again, the fact that they were willing to at least engage in discussions, to me, not knowing anything, says that it wasn't 100% in their minds that they were going to get him in free agency. So it's like, all right, well, let's try to get him now. And then fast forward, and you have this great section of the book, which again details that the Cuban exchange with the reporters and showing his phone and everything. And you also write that Cuban said, knowing the numbers now, meaning the 4 for 104, I would have paid it in a heartbeat, but he wouldn't have come anyway. And you have there's additional reporting in there about the canceled meeting, which Cuban has since gone on the roommates pod, and they've agreed that it was the Mavs who actually canceled the meeting. I'm still trying to figure out why the Mavs didn't go forward and at least put the number in front of him. I don't know what the number
Cuban
is.
Cuban, dude, and when the Knicks got hit for a tampering charge, because my reporting was 4 years in excess of $100 million. So I didn't have the exact, what was it, those $4 million that you weren't sure about? But again, dude,
everybody knew.
It's not like I said in the book, anybody with casual interest in the NBA and an internet connection knew roughly what the numbers were. And so it's complete revision. That is complete revisionist history by Cuban, of course. The Mavericks, and this was Cuban, put the line in the sand at quote unquote Fred VanVleet money. So they're offering 5 for 105. VanVleet's salary at the time was 21 mil. 5 for 105 or 4 for 104. Like, come on, dude. What? Like, seriously? And then obviously the Fred VanVleet money is hilarious because the very next summer, VanVleet signs 3 for 130. So, but that's the comp that they had for Brunson. That's kind of the ceiling that they thought Brunson had. And VanVleet's been a heck of a player, but like they never thought Brunson was a legitimate star. And honestly, though, the 4 for 104, the other thing is Cuban underestimated how easily the Knicks would be able to carve out that cap space.
Brock Aller's a crafty man. Yeah.
I mean, he thought like, okay, hey, worst comes to worst, they're going to have to work with us and we'll get a first round pick out of the deal. Nope. Then they, dumped Nerlens Noel. And what was it? Alec Burks, I believe.
Noel Burks and Kemba also went out somewhere.
Yeah, Kemba was out on draft night, and that's when you're like, okay, this is happening. Draft night's when everybody in the league knew, okay, Brunson's gone. And then how are they going to create the cap space? Cuban's like, well, hey, we'll at least take a first round pick and keep it moving. But listen, as Rick Brunson says, make it hard. You made it easy. If the Mavericks, and they would have gotten criticized for this, but it would have been very interesting if Cuban would have called their bluff with a big deal. Max was 5 for 158, but even if it's say like, 5 for 140 or whatever, they would have gotten ripped for overpaying at the time. I think Brunson's proven. I mean, he got a massive raise, and everybody talks about what a crazy bargain he gave the Knicks on this next contract. But that was definitely a sliding doors moment. And as badly as the Mavericks completely just botched that whole situation, going back to literally the second they signed his rookie contract, when Leon Rose tricked him into, I'm not going to say tricked him, Leon Rose doing a hell of a job representing his agent, made it to where the contract was signed. I forget the exact language of it, but
it's a non-guarantee versus a team option.
Yes, which is the difference between him being a restricted free agent versus unrestricted. And obviously if he's a restricted free agent, then you control everything. So that changed. So they botched the Brunson stuff from literally the second that he signed his rookie contract all the way till his final moments. And, this was, if Cubans, the thing about Cuban's revisionist history is all you have to do is go back through what he said over the time. And the last thing he said after the Western Conference Finals run about Brunson, literally that night, he was assuming that Brunson was returning on the record. So, it's like, so which on the record statement do you want to believe? But yeah, the crazy thing is, as badly as they botched that situation, they recovered from it because they were able to get Kyrie months later at a massively deflated price, because of all the controversy with swirling around Kyrie in Brooklyn. And it didn't pay immediate dividends, but the Kyrie-Luka tandem was a happy, harmonious co-star duo.
And I think there's a little bit of irony there in that them getting Kyrie now it looks like they got Kyrie for a song, given what he's been, that emboldened them maybe a little bit to pull off this Luka trade. So I think there's, again, a little bit of irony there. And to take it back to the Knicks for a second, then we'll talk about them and get you out of here, is that night on draft night with all that cap maneuverability, they also opened up space to sign one Isaiah Hartenstein. And when they gave him a contract, it, of course, was only for 2 years, which didn't get them full bird rights, only got them early bird rights. And that led to this summer. And that led to the Knicks team that we see now, which is how I'll transition because I want to talk to you a little bit about these Knicks. So Brunson obviously is out right now. We'll see what the update's going to be in, I guess, 6 days because they gave us the little thing yesterday. It's been an interesting season here. I've kind of over the last few weeks started to ask myself if Brunson is maybe even as important off the court and in the locker room as he is on the court. As where, it's funny in the piece you quote Rick Brunson talking about how Brunson never says anything and he learned that from Villanova. And as I read that snippet from you, I'm like, well, Mikal Bridges sure didn't get the memo because he said a couple of things to some reporters a few weeks ago, which I know you're aware of. So we had that. We had a Josh Hart thing with Tibbs on the sidelines. It seems that without Brunson present every day, I don't want to say things are unraveling, but it's not what we've become accustomed to here in the last few years. So again, having covered this guy and also just knowing the league, knowing Tibbs, and knowing all these parties, like, what do you think is up with the Knicks right now? And how much do you think that they are missing Brunson? Forget about even on the court.
Oh, listen, Brunson's clearly the leader of that team. He's the captain. I mean, he's press release and all. He's the captain. Brunson, though, he was that guy with the Mavericks at least his last year, and he'd always been like an important part of the culture. He is a great locker room. I'm not just leader, but connector and calmer. And that's really the Mavericks massively missed that after he left. Massively missed that. Now, Kyrie, as much as people might think this sounds silly, Kyrie has filled that void in Dallas, or did fill that void in Dallas. Last year, Luka obviously was their best player, but Kyrie was the leader. He was the calmer. He was the connector in that locker room. But yeah, Brunson is as good as it gets in the NBA in that regard. And in New York, it's even different or more important because he is the best player on that team. So his voice carries even that much more. And I think he's a guy who, look, Tibbs is not always going to be the easiest guy in the world to play for. Right?
Really? This is breaking news here on the Knicks Film School Podcast.
Yes. But who's got a better relationship or understands Tibbs more than Jalen Brunson? Literally met him when he was, hours old in the hospital. I mean, that's how Tibbs rocked this kid as a baby. They go back that deep. And he understands Tibbs. He can interpret Tibbs. He can, kind of reinforce Tibbs' message or soften Tibbs' message away, however is appropriate to serve as that intermediary in the locker room, and do it in a way where it's not like he is an extension of the coaching staff, but he is the leader of that locker room, right? It's sometimes when you have these deals where it's like, oh, he's the coach's guy, and that can be it can be dicey. Not with Brunson, because he has the credibility, he has the respect in that locker room. And the Knicks are such a unique team in that a lot of these relationships go back way before any of these guys stepped on an NBA court, or at least into an NBA uniform, I should say. Brunson obviously grew up on an NBA court.
So one more before I let you go. I'm gonna ask you to look into your Magic 8 Ball here, and I'll just say before I ask this, I told you last time, I'll say it again. Until the end of time, I'm always going to be a Tibbs guy. Very big believer in the coach. I'm a big believer in the culture that he instilled here, his value to the franchise, and I just think he's a good NBA coach that maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves. That said, I don't think it's insane to imagine a world where if the Knicks disappointed in the postseason, that there could be conversations about that spot because this is New York. The pressure to win is what it is. If something were to happen there and they were to look in a different direction, which obviously we have no idea if that's the case, and you have the situation where Rick Brunson is, I don't know that he's has any title as the number 2, but it sure feels like he's the number 2 at times.
If he's not the number 2, if he's not the lead assistant, he's definitely the one who carries the most weight in the organization for a variety of reasons.
Yes. How, again, I'm asking you to prognosticate here. How do you think that situation, like how much would the Rick Brunson, maybe this is the way I should ask it, of it all factor into what the organization maybe looks at in terms of Tibbs? And again, I know Leon Rose never talks, and this is a tough thing to speculate, but it could get dicey. Am I right?
Well, I think your entire premise, and you're following that team on a day-to-day basis. I see the Knicks, 2 to 3 times a year because I'm primarily Western Conference. So, I don't know how solid your premise is. I haven't heard, I'll say this, I have not heard around the league even speculation that Tibbs could be in jeopardy. And
I don't think that's out there. I exactly. It's the premise is probably faulty to begin with, but
yeah. And so typically if a coach is going to be fired at this point, I've at least heard, because I like every time I go to a game, I eat dinner with scouts. I shoot the bull with scouts and executives and whatnot pregame for a while. I traffic pretty heavily in NBA gossip. I haven't even heard any gossip about Tibbs potentially being in trouble. So
there you go. That's it.
And a lot of times, there will be gossip. You hear gossip on a lot of coaches who end up surviving too. So the fact that I haven't heard any at all, and he's so tied into the best player. But honestly, I know him and Hart had that blow up, but dude, his relationship with Hart, and has he butted heads with Bridges on the minutes thing? Yeah, but I would be very surprised if Tibbs isn't the coach moving forward there. And then, if your premise ends up being accurate, yeah, there's a lot of layers to unpeel there. And it's a different dynamic because the whole franchise right now is built around Jalen Brunson, the guy who the Mavericks didn't think was worth giving more than $21 million a year.
If you want to read more about that, Jalen Brunson and a gentleman by the name of Luka Doncic, we actually didn't really get a chance to talk about that much, even though that's what the book is about. I am going to consume this thing like nobody's business. I can't wait to dig in. I mean, I am a little offended. I see blurbs from Zach Lowe and Windhorst and Chris Herring. I don't know what I didn't do that those people did that I couldn't get asked to provide a blurb.
Feel free to publish your blurb on any social media account, and I'll tap the retweet button. I can promise you that.
There you go.
By the way, I mentioned the KP trade, obviously the Brunson situation. The other massive Dallas New York tie that had a lot to do with the way things have unfolded in Dallas this season is the firing of Casey Smith in Dallas. The director, I don't know what his official title is in New York, but director of health and performance, essentially. There might be some fancy words in there. Not a coincidence that Jalen Brunson's Knicks snatched him up as soon as they could. He was Dirk's, every star who played in Dallas loved him. He's one of Dirk's best friends. Jay Kidd loved him. Luka loved him. And the firing of Casey Smith had a lot to do. It was a huge domino in the fraying of the relationship between Luka and the front office, specifically Nico Harrison. And, you look at it right now, the Mavericks might get Anthony Davis back tomorrow in Madison Square Garden, but the Mavericks have had a medical catastrophe of a season, among other things. I know Brunson's hurt now, but trust me, he's getting great care. Do the Knicks, they still have the fewest games missed due to injury?
I was about to bring it up. I saw that stat, I want to say 2 weeks ago. They had the fewest games missed due to injury, despite the fact that their players obviously play a goodly number of minutes on a nightly basis. So is that a coincidence? Maybe not.
Casey Smith might be the best in the business. He's certainly as respected as anybody in his field, beloved by players, including Luka. And, he's not like a headline name, obviously, but Casey Smith's departure played a pretty significant role in the way things have unfolded in Dallas. Now, with the book that you bought, it's an early copy. Casey Smith's name is mentioned several times in that one. To get to the full, ramification of his departure, you do have to, with proof of purchase, download the final copy or get the final copy sent to you via PDF.
So let's end it there. Give the plug. So you could obviously get the book at bookstores. You can order the book online anywhere books are sold. And the bonus chapter that, again, just as long as you show your like proof that you bought it, you get the bonus chapter.
Right. And there's a link. I've tweeted it out. I'll be tweeting it out again.
We'll put it in the description to this episode. The link that you tweeted out.
Yeah. And you know, on Kindle and all those kind of things, it's in there. You know, hopefully we're going to mow through these early copies and get it in the next run. I have emphasized to the publishing company that final chapter is more important than the rest of them. That little plot twist is pretty significant.
I'm sure it's a wonderful final chapter, but just having been a fan of yours for a long time, I can't wait to dig through the first however many chapters there are there, because you are as good as they come. Obviously, huge fan of what you guys do on Hoop Collective, and this was a lot of fun. Looking forward already to the next time we do it.
Well, I appreciate you having me back, and adios, amigos.